As the astronauts of Apollo 11 headed to the moon, the women of NASA were blazing new trails on Earth.
First walked on the moon, some amazing new images are out. NASA's lunar orbiter snapped photos of the landing sites of several Apollo missions. Here they are. One shows astronaut footprints.
Grok AI just ripped open a secret that has been buried on the moon for billions of years. In early 2026, a team of independent researchers fed over 35,000 high-resolution NASA Apollo moon photographs into Grok AI and told it one thing: find whatever is there. Then, Grok found things inside those photographs that no human eye had caught in over 50 years of looking. Lights burning in places where there should be nothing but total darkness. Shadows falling in directions that are impossible on a dead world. And when those findings were placed in front of experts, every single one of them went completely silent. Nobody was willing to offer an explanation. This is the story of what is actually hiding on the moon, and why the truth has been kept from you until now. The moon is not what you think.
How you read? Okay, read you, babe. You're looking good on the ground, Odyssey.
Before Grok could even begin breaking down what it found in those photographs, it flagged something that stopped the researchers before the analysis had barely started. It pointed out that the moon they thought they knew was not the real one. The picture they had in their heads, that calm, glowing, familiar disk hanging peacefully in the night sky, is nothing more than a comfortable illusion. The real moon is something far darker, far deadlier, and far more terrifying than anything they had ever been told. And it all started with what is actually up there. The moon has no atmosphere. Zero. None at all. There is no air, no wind, no weather, and absolutely nothing standing between its surface and the full, unfiltered violence of outer space. And because of that, every single second of every single day, the moon is being bombarded by micrometeorites. These are tiny particles flying through space at speeds faster than a bullet, and there is nothing on the moon to stop them or burn them up. This has been happening without pause for 4 billion years. 4 billion years of constant, relentless, unstoppable bombardment.
Apollo 11, Houston, got a minute and a half to LOS. You're looking great. Been a mighty fine day.
And here is what 4 billion years of that does to the moon. It grinds the entire surface down into a fine layer of dust. Scientists call it regolith. But do not let that calm, scientific word fool you into thinking it is harmless, because it is one of the most dangerous substances any human being has ever come into contact with. Here is why. On Earth, rock gets worn down over thousands of years by wind and water until the sharp edges become smooth and rounded. We call that process weathering. The moon has zero weathering. There is no wind up there. There is no water. Nothing smooths anything down. So, every single grain of lunar dust is a microscopic shard of volcanic glass with razor-sharp edges that have never once been dulled. It is sharp as broken glass and fine as powder and completely invisible to the naked eye. And it covers the entire surface of the moon like a silent, deadly blanket. Now, here is where it gets truly horrifying. Apollo astronaut Gene Cernan was the last man to ever walk on the moon.
Gene Cernan was one of only 12 men to ever do so. He was a U.S. Navy captain when he was selected by NASA to be part of the original Gemini program.
In his post-mission debrief, after everything he had experienced up there, he did not talk about the craters or the view of Earth hanging in the black sky. The very first thing he flagged as the biggest danger on the moon was the dust. His exact words were these: "Dust is probably our greatest problem on the moon. I think we can overcome other physiological or physical or mechanical problems except dust. Not the vacuum of space, not the radiation, the dust." That terrified him most. When the Apollo astronauts finished walking on the surface and climbed back into their capsule, the dust was stuck all over their boots and suits, and they carried it straight inside with them. It filled the sealed cabin immediately, and every single astronaut described the smell the exact same way: burnt gunpowder, sharp and chemical, and deeply, deeply wrong. Harrison Schmitt developed what NASA quietly called lunar hay fever. His eyes watered without stopping, his nose ran, his lungs burned, he sneezed constantly. And years later, when scientists finally ran laboratory tests on simulated lunar dust, the results were absolutely horrifying. A single exposure to this dust killed up to 90% of human lung cells and brain cells on contact. Not over time, on contact. The smallest particles were so fine, they passed straight through lung tissue and traveled up the olfactory nerve directly into the brain. These men breathed this substance while walking on the moon, and none of them fully understood what it was doing to their bodies. And honestly, the dust is only the beginning. The temperature on the lunar surface swings 300 degrees Celsius between day and night. To understand how violent that is, consider this. On the side of the moon facing the sun, it is so hot that lead would melt into liquid right in front of your eyes. Then, when that same spot rotates away from the sun and falls into the lunar night, the temperature plunges so violently that oxygen itself would freeze solid on the ground. That same rock, that same patch of ground, swinging between those two extremes over and over again forever, with no protection of any kind. The moon does not just look dead, it is actively, aggressively hostile to everything that tries to exist on it. And the 12 men we sent there to walk on that surface, smile for the cameras, and plant the flag paid a terrible price for it. A price that NASA never properly told the public about. Here is the part that almost nobody knows. Scientists published a study in a journal called Scientific Reports, one of the most respected peer-reviewed scientific publications in the world. What they found inside that study should have been screaming from every front page on Earth. It was not. They tracked the long-term health of every single Apollo astronaut who walked on the moon and compared them against astronauts who only flew in low Earth orbit, meaning they stayed safely within Earth's protective magnetic field and never crossed into deep space. The results were devastating. Astronauts who only flew in low Earth orbit had a cardiovascular disease death rate of about 11%. Normal. Unremarkable. No different from astronauts who never flew at all. The men who flew to the moon had a cardiovascular disease death rate of 43%, 4 to 5 times higher than every other group. The researchers concluded that deep space radiation, the kind that hammers the unprotected lunar surface with full force because the moon has no magnetic field to push it away, had physically destroyed the inner lining of these men's blood vessels, and the moon broke their hearts from the inside out, and the damage crept up on them in silence for years. Here is one more thing that makes this even darker. While those astronauts were walking on the surface, they were carrying dosimeters, small devices that measure radiation exposure. NASA logged those readings, but the radiation data collected directly from the lunar surface during the Apollo missions was never publicly reported. What we do know comes from China's Chang'e 4 lander, which gave the world the first comprehensive radiation measurements ever taken from the moon's surface in 2019. The confirmed radiation level on the moon is 200 times higher than on Earth. During a solar flare, it climbs to 1,000 times higher. Current science says a human being can survive on the lunar surface for roughly 2 months before radiation exposure becomes life-threatening. The Apollo astronauts had nothing between them and that radiation except a spacesuit that was never built for long-term protection. They walked on a world that was quietly tearing them apart from the inside, and the photographs they brought back from that world sat in NASA's archive for over 50 years, until an AI finally looked at them properly. And what it found inside those images explains, in the darkest way imaginable, why the truth may have been buried for this long. What Grok found inside the photos. So, what exactly did Grok find when it tore through those 35,000 photographs? The AI flagged hundreds of features it could not explain through any known natural process. But 4 specific photographs stopped the researchers completely. These are real images. They carry NASA catalog numbers. They have been publicly available for decades. Thousands of people have looked at them. And for over 50 years, nobody fully grasped what was hiding inside them, until now. So, let us open these doors one at a time. The first photograph takes us back to November 1969. Apollo 12 was the second crewed mission to reach the moon, and it landed in a flat, gray region called the Ocean of Storms. The astronauts took hundreds of photographs from the surface. Among those images, 6 specific photographs were pulled from public release and classified by the government, locked away, hidden. For 57 years, nobody outside the government saw them. Then on May 8, 2026, the Pentagon released them as part of the largest government UFO file release in American history. And the moment those photographs became public, it was immediately obvious why they had been buried for more than half a century. In one image, you were looking at the gray lunar surface stretching out toward the horizon. The sky above is pure black because the moon has no atmosphere to scatter light the way Earth does. And hovering above that horizon, there is a light. Not a star sitting far away in deep space. Not a reflection bouncing off the camera lens. An actual light suspended directly above the surface of the moon. When government analysts zoomed into the highlighted area of that photograph, that single light pulled apart into 3 distinct points arranged together in the darkness, holding position above the lunar ground. In another photograph from the exact same mission, Pentagon analysts identified not 3 but 5 separate unidentified objects above the horizon, and officially labeled them Area 1 through Area 5 in the government release documents, 5 of them, above the moon. In a photograph taken in 1969, the government's official response to what they were looking at was this. They said there was no explanation, no consensus, no identification. After 57 years of having these photographs locked in a classified archive, the best answer the United States government could produce was that they did not know what those lights were. Now here is the part that makes it completely impossible to dismiss any of this as a camera error or a film blemish. Astronaut Alan Bean was standing on the surface of the moon when these photographs were taken. He saw these lights with his own eyes in real time. He watched them while he was actually there and reported them live to Mission Control while they were happening. His exact words, preserved in the official transcript, were these: "It looks like some of those things are escaping the moon. They really haul out of here and just press off at the stars." And then those photographs were classified and dragged out of public view for 57 years. When Grok analyzed these images in 2026, it flagged the light formations not just for how they looked, but for how they behaved across multiple frames. The points of light maintained identical spacing and positioning relative to each other from one photograph to the next. They were not drifting randomly. They were not tumbling like loose debris. They were holding their formation deliberately across every single frame. But that was only the first door. The second door is darker. In July 1971, Commander David Scott and lunar module pilot James Irwin landed at a site called Hadley Apennine, the most geologically complex and dramatic landing site of the entire Apollo program. To picture where they were standing, imagine a massive canyon carved deep into the surface of the moon. This canyon is called Hadley Rill. It stretches 135 kilometers from end to end and drops 370 meters straight down into the lunar ground. To give you a sense of how deep that is, the Empire State Building stands 443 meters tall. Hadley Rill is nearly as deep as that entire building is tall, and it is not a small crack in the ground. It is 1.2 kilometers wide, a vast, dark, gaping wound cut into the face of the moon. Now, here is the part that has been quietly disturbing geologists for decades and has never been resolved. Nobody has ever been able to fully explain how Hadley Rill got there. On Earth, the largest lava channels ever recorded that carve features like this into the ground are less than 10 kilometers long. Hadley Rill is 135 kilometers long. That is more than 13 times bigger than anything volcanic activity has ever produced on Earth. The scientific calculations for how lava flows and cuts through rock simply do not account for something of that scale existing on the moon. Geologists have debated it for over 50 years, and the honest answer, the answer that nobody likes to say out loud, is that they do not fully know what created it. Scott and Irwin drove their lunar rover to the rim of this canyon and photographed everything they could see. Those photographs are publicly available. They have been studied for over 50 years. When Grok analyzed them, it found shadows that had no right to be there. Here is why that matters so much. On the moon, there is exactly one light source, the sun. It comes from one direction. When sunlight strikes a natural rock formation, the shadow it casts is soft and irregular because rock is irregular and random in shape. That is just basic geology. But in the photographs from the base of Hadley Rill, Grok pulled out shadows with straight edges, defined corners, perfect right angles. The kind of geometry that does not grow out of rock. The kind that is built, not formed. The features casting those shadows appeared to be partially buried under the regolith, consistent with objects that had been steadily covered by millions of years of dust accumulation. Their orientation was not random either. Multiple features across different photographs lined up with each other in ways that pointed to deliberate placement rather than geological accident. During the mission, Scott made radio comments about unusual features he was observing in specific locations. At several of those moments, Mission Control asked him to move the conversation to a different communication channel. Those private channel recordings have never been released. The transcripts simply stop. The audio does not exist in any public archive. Whatever Scott said when the public channel went silent is gone forever. And things would get even more uncomfortable from there. In July 2024, a research team led by scientists at the University of Trento in Italy published a confirmed discovery in Nature Astronomy, one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world. You do not publish speculation in Nature Astronomy. You publish verified, peer-reviewed proof. What they proved was this: the moon has a massive hole in it. Not a crater caused by a meteor strike on the surface. A pit. A vertical opening that drops straight down 105 meters into the interior of the moon before the walls disappear into complete darkness. To picture how wide that opening is, imagine standing at one end of a football field and looking all the way to the other end. That is roughly the width of this hole in the moon. This pit is not just a hole that stops at the bottom. Radar measurements taken by NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter confirmed that at the bottom of this pit, there is an entrance to an underground cave tunnel running deep into the rock inside the moon. The entrance to that cave tunnel is at least 45 meters wide. How far it stretches from there, nobody knows. The radar could only show the opening. No camera has ever been sent inside. No robot has ever gone in to explore what is in there. Whatever is inside that tunnel has been sitting in total darkness beneath the surface of the moon, and nobody has ever seen it. This pit sits in the region of the moon called the Sea of Tranquility. That is the exact same area where Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed in 1969 and became the first human beings to walk on the moon. Armstrong and Aldrin landed just 250 miles from this pit. They walked on the surface directly above this hidden underground world for hours, collected rocks, planted a flag, and had absolutely no idea that beneath their boots the moon was hollow. The lead researcher described the discovery with these words: "We found a sort of front door to enter the subsurface, a front door into the inside of the moon." Scientists now believe there are at least 200 similar pits scattered across the lunar surface, every single one a potential entrance to a network of tunnels running through the moon's interior. And the crew of Apollo 17 saw these objects with their own eyes, in real time, while flying toward the moon. What those men said about what they witnessed is the story we need to tell next. What the astronauts saw and what they were terrified to say. The photographs are only one half of this story. The other half lives in the memories, the silences, and the private conversations of the 12 men who actually went up there. And what those men experienced, and what they were genuinely frightened to say out loud, is darker than anything Grok found in any image. NASA had a brutal and simple policy during the Apollo era. Any sign of psychological instability, any suggestion that what you experienced in space disturbed or unsettled you in a way you could not control, you were grounded permanently. Astronauts knew this, and they adapted to it hard. Space historian Sean O'Kane documented what insiders called the lie-to-fly policy among Apollo-era astronauts. They reported what Mission Control wanted to hear. Everything else stayed locked inside. Then came Apollo 10, and the night that 3 men heard something on the far side of the moon that none of them could explain. May 1969, one mission before the first moon landing. Commander Tom Stafford, Command Module Pilot John Young, and Lunar Module Pilot Gene Cernan. Their assignment was to fly to the moon, rehearse every step of the landing without touching down, and return. When they crossed to the far side of the moon, all radio contact with Earth cut off completely. The signal cannot travel around the moon. There is no way through. They were entirely alone. And while they were there, they heard something in their headsets. Cernan said it first. His exact words from the declassified transcript: "You hear that? That whistling sound, boy, that sure is weird music. It was not static. It was not white noise. It was tonal and rhythmic, and all three crew members described it the same way. Music, outer space music. It went on for nearly an hour. The three men talked about it in hushed voices while it played, and at one point in the recording, one of them said something that should stop you cold. He said, "No one will believe us." Three highly trained NASA astronauts completely cut off from Earth, alone on the far side of the moon. And their first instinct was to wonder whether they should even report it because they were afraid nobody would believe them. And they were even more afraid of what reporting it might cost them. NASA classified that transcript. It was not declassified until 2008. The audio itself was hidden for nearly 40 years. Apollo 15 astronaut Al Worden, a man who flew to the moon himself, was asked about the recording publicly and said without hesitation, "Logic tells me that if there was something recorded on there, then there was something there." NASA's official position was radio interference between the two spacecraft modules. They shut the conversation down and moved on. But 3 years later, on the very last Apollo mission ever flown, it came back. And this time, it was far worse. Apollo 17, December 1972. Cernan was the commander now. On day one of the mission, still traveling through deep space toward the moon, Command Module pilot Ronald Evans looked out his window and saw something moving alongside the spacecraft. Bright particles, he reported, fragments of something, tumbling and drifting right next to them as the ship maneuvered. Schmidt looked out his own window and said what he saw into the official mission record in words that the Pentagon formally declassified in 2026. He said, "It's like the 4th of July out there." The crew tried to explain it as debris from the rocket, flakes of paint or ice breaking off. But in the same transcript, they admitted this was, in their own words, a wild guess. Then on day 2, Cernan tried to sleep and could not, because something outside the spacecraft kept flashing. He logged everything he experienced in careful detail. He described bursts of intense light that he was absolutely certain were not optical illusions happening inside his own eyes. He described one burst with these exact words: "A very bright headlight, like a train coming at you, only with a flash." Over the next 3 hours, he observed multiple flashing objects and concluded in his own assessment that they corresponded to physical objects in space and not to any optical phenomenon. Mission Control suggested electromagnetic interference. Cernan had circled the moon before on Apollo 10. He knew what interference felt and sounded like. He did not accept that answer, and the transcript makes that clear. The crew landed, completed their mission. Cernan became the last human being to stand on the surface of the moon. He climbed the ladder of the lunar module and paused for a long moment before stepping inside. He looked back at the surface one final time. Then he sealed the hatch. In the years before his death in 2017, Japanese space historian Takano Jousen, who documented a close personal acquaintance with Cernan, stated that Cernan had privately described receiving what he called a kind of warning during the Apollo 17 mission. Not a radio transmission, not anything that could be picked up on equipment, something more direct than that. Something that told him, in a way he struggled to put into words, that humanity should not return. Cernan never said this publicly. He never confirmed it in any interview or press appearance. Whatever he truly experienced on that mission, he carried it silently for the rest of his life, and he took it with him when he died. But here is what is not private. Here is what is not a claim or an allegation or an interpretation. Here is the cold, hard fact that sits at the center of all of this. After Cernan sealed that hatch in December 1972, after the most powerful and technologically advanced civilization in human history had successfully sent men to the moon 6 separate times in 4 years, everything stopped. Not just America. The Soviet Union, which had spent decades and billions of rubles and the work of its greatest scientific minds trying to beat America to the moon, also stopped. 2 superpowers who disagreed about absolutely everything arrived at the exact same quiet decision at the exact same moment. No more moon. We are done. That was 54 years ago. And in all that time, with all the technology humanity has built since then, not one single human being has gone back. The cover trail, the holes in the archive, and what is coming. So here is the question that everything we have covered leads directly to. If Grok found all of this inside photographs that have been publicly available for over 50 years, why did it take an AI in 2026 to find it? And why, when researchers started examining the archive carefully, did they find that the most important images had been quietly degraded? Because the archive has holes in it. And those holes are not random. They line up with devastating precision directly over everything Grok flagged. NASA's Apollo Photographic Archive is publicly available. That is the official position, and it is technically true. Every mission, every frame, all digitized and released. Anyone can look. But when researchers mapped the locations of Grok's most significant findings against the quality of the available images from those same locations, something emerged that should not be there. The photographs containing the features Grok rated most highly as inconsistent with natural processes were consistently available at lower resolution than the photographs surrounding them on the same film rolls from the same missions. These images came from the same Hasselblad cameras, the same film, the same lighting conditions, shot within minutes of each other. There is no legitimate technical reason for quality to vary between frames on the same roll of film. Hasselblad cameras produce consistent, uniform results. That is precisely why NASA chose them, yet the specific frames flagged by Grok were degraded, harder to examine. And the degradation corresponded directly with what the AI had identified. Researchers submitted formal requests to NASA for higher resolution scans of the specific images in question. NASA rejected every request. The official explanation given was that the original film was too fragile to rescan. But this explanation collapsed immediately under scrutiny. NASA conducted major digitization projects of Apollo photography in 2004 and again in subsequent years, using high-resolution drum scanners, producing superior scans of thousands of frames and releasing them publicly. The technology existed and was actively used, just not on these particular frames. Then came the Freedom of Information Act requests. Independent researchers filed formal FOIA requests targeting internal NASA communications from the Apollo era. What came back were memos. Internal documents referencing, in NASA's own language, photographic anomalies requiring further analysis before public discussion. The memos did not specify what the anomalies were. When researchers followed up and asked NASA officials directly what those anomalies referred to, NASA declined to answer. So here's what that means in plain language. NASA found unusual things in the Apollo photographs during the missions themselves. They wrote internal memos about those findings. They decided these things should not be discussed publicly before further analysis. And then for over 50 years, that further analysis was never made public. Nobody needed to gather in a dark room and orchestrate a cover-up. Institutional silence is far quieter and far more powerful than that. Scientists with careers built on NASA funding had no reason to publish findings that would invite ridicule. Journals would reject papers on the subject without reading the evidence. The entire system pushed everyone away from the question without anyone needing to give a single direct order. And the question sat there unanswered, inside photographs that were technically accessible to anyone, but that nobody with institutional standing was willing to seriously face. Until Grok looked at what was there and reported exactly what it found. And now, the walls are coming down. On May 8, 2026, the Pentagon launched the Pursuit program and released the first 162 classified government files on unidentified anomalous phenomena. The Apollo 12 photographs were in there. The Apollo 17 triangle image was in there. The astronaut transcripts were in there. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth stood publicly and said, "These files, hidden behind classifications, have long fueled justified speculation. It is time the American people see it for themselves." And then he confirmed this was only the first batch. Tens of millions of documents are still being processed. More Apollo material is coming. The original Apollo 17 film is in government hands right now, and the analysis of it is still ongoing. And then there is where we are going next. NASA's Artemis program launched its first crewed mission beyond low Earth orbit in April 2026, the first time human beings have traveled that far into space since Apollo 17. The planned landing target is the lunar South Pole, specifically the region bordering the South Pole Aitken Basin, a crater 2,500 kilometers across and 8 kilometers deep. One of the largest impact structures in the entire solar system. Portions of its interior have not seen a single ray of sunlight in billions of years. The temperature in those permanently shadowed sections reaches -238 degrees Celsius. This is also the region where Grok's analysis flagged its highest concentration of unexplained anomalies across the entire archive. And it is the region where publicly available high-resolution photographic coverage is the thinnest of any major feature on the moon. When Artemis cameras photograph that terrain, when future AI systems far more powerful than Grok analyze what those cameras capture and compare it against every coordinate Grok flagged, we will get answers. Not theories, not interpretations. Hard data that either confirms or shatters everything Grok found. And either answer changes the story of humanity in ways that cannot be walked back. The moon has hung in your sky every night of your entire life. Familiar, constant, seemingly understood. But what Grok pulled out of 35,000 photographs that human eyes spent 50 years looking at, without truly seeing, tells us that our understanding of what is up there has been incomplete in ways we are only beginning to confront. The photographs exist. The Pentagon investigation is open and active. The cave beneath the Sea of Tranquility is real and scientifically confirmed. The astronauts said what they said. The archive has holes exactly where the answers should be. And the last man to walk on the moon sealed a hatch in December 1972, left, and for 54 years, not a single human being from any nation on Earth went back. The silence that protected these secrets for half a century is ending now. What replaces it is coming. And the moon rising over your house tonight is the same moon it has always been. The only difference is that for the first time, after 54 years, we are